Hi, I'm Maggie. Thank you for stopping by Crafts the Charm today. I'm so glad you're here. And today what I want to do is make over ball Christmas ornaments to make them look more expensive than they really are. You might have just some plastic ornaments that you'd like to upgrade, or maybe you picked some up on Facebook Marketplace. What I have here is a bunch of Dollar Tree ornaments in various sizes, colors, and textures that I'm going to upgrade. So for this first makeover, I'm going to use the 3-inch balls from the Dollar Tree. I have those in gold and like a gold glitter. And I'm going to do one that's just plain gold and another one that's the gold glitter, although I think the plain texture is going to work a little bit easier. And what I'm going for here is a sort of ombre glazed pottery look. So what I have is 3 colors here. I have apple barrel acrylic paint in burnt umber, apple barrel acrylic paint in white, and then I have this hunter green color as well. I'm also going to use some bronze metal. And what I'm going to do is paint the bottom of the ball in a thick layer of the burnt umber. Over that, I'm going to put a thin line of the hunter green, and then over that, I'm going to put another thin line of the bronze metal. And then on top, I'm going to do a thick layer of the white. I want that to be thick enough that it will drip down through the other colors. And then to encourage some mixing where it's going through the other colors, I'm going to use a paintbrush and press down into that gently to get the colors to mix. And then I have a little cup of water here where I'm rinsing off the paintbrush so that when I put it back into the white, I'm not bringing the colors into the white. So I just want to mix what's underneath the white. The water also encourages the paint to drip down a little bit. And once I'm satisfied with the way it's dripping, and I want the drips to basically cover up those other bands that aren't brown. So once I have it like that, I'm just going to hang it up and let it dry thoroughly. Now I did a second one as well, and for this one, I again used the thick layer of brown at the bottom, but I used a layer of red instead of green next, and then again the bronze metal. And with this one, I put a lot less white at the top, so I made those other colors come up higher on the ball, because with the first one the white dripped down really far and you couldn't see as much of the brown. So I thought I would try it with a lot less white on top and see what that looked like. Okay, so once those are thoroughly dry, here is what they look like, and I really do love that mixing of colors in these. I thought because they are Christmas ornaments, they could look a little more glitzy. So what I'm going to do is take that bronze metal and put it at the top and encourage that to drip down. So basically, I put the bronze metal at the top, and then I kept adding just a little bit of water to it until it was wet enough that it started to drip down. And I did this for both of the ornaments. Now, here's what those look like now that they're completely dry. And even though I liked them before, I really do love the addition of the gold. I want to seal them, but I do not want to use matte Mod Podge because I think that will dull the gold a little bit. So I'm going to use spar urethane with a gloss finish. I think any spray with a gloss finish would be fine. This is an indoor project, so it doesn't need to be spar urethane. Unfortunately, I didn't have as much left in my can as I thought. Where this covered one of my ornaments, I thought it looked fabulous. It gives it a really glossy look. But the other one didn't get covered quite as much, so I did use some matte Mod Podge on the non-gold parts of it just to seal the paint. Now, one component of these balls that doesn't look that high end is the little gold hanger on the top. So I'm going to cover the hangers on these balls with some pieces of brown grosgrain ribbon. So I just measured it around. This was a thicker ribbon, so I cut it in half. And I'm just going to use hot glue to glue that around the top of the hanger at the top of each ball. And that's it for the pour balls. Now for the next balls, I am going to again make over the 3-inch balls. Of course, you can do either of these with any size ball, but I think you want it large enough that you can see the paint technique. And I'm going to do 3 of these. And this is also going to be a pottery look ball, but I'm going for a different look with this one, more of a raw pottery look. So to start, I want to give it some texture. And I'm going to use some chalk paint for this. The color doesn't really matter. What I have here is sheepskin, and the reason I'm using this is it's very thick. You can see I can hold it upside down and it doesn't drip at all. And I'm using a stenciling brush, and I'm just going to sort of pounce it all over the ball to give it a little bit of a pottery texture. Now, if you don't have chalk paint, you can get the same effect by adding some baking soda to some acrylic paint. I've done that many times. My only advice is to make sure you mix it up really well so you don't end up with chunks of baking soda in your paint. That will just brush off the painted surface if you do that. So I covered them completely and then allowed them to dry completely. So the next step, once the texture has dried, is to give them a color like pottery. And here I would say match or try to match a color of pottery that you like. And I'm also going to say I considered making something that looked sort of like gingerbread. And if you're going to do that, you're going to want to paint yours a different color from the color that I'm going to paint mine. So use the color paints that you have and create a color that looks right to you. I think the key to this is some depth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with Mississippi mud, which is a sort of a dark tan, I guess. And I'm not going to brush it on the ball. I'm again going to sort of pounce it over the ball because we don't want brush strokes. And then I'm going to take burnt umber and mix it with white and tap that over the Mississippi mud. But a little bit of the Mississippi mud will show through. And then I let that dry completely. That's my sort of grayish background. Once that had dried completely, I wanted a more tan color to go over the top, and I created that by mixing pumpkin orange, burnt umber, and white. And then I went over the entire ball with that color, again, pouncing it over the ball. And that was a color that I was happy with that sort of gray color coming through a little bit, but primarily tan. So I let those dry completely, and I want to show you my prototype ball here, because I considered a few different ways to decorate these balls. So the first one is sort of your classic blue painted, flowers. And I also tried a reindeer, and I originally painted him in blue. And then I thought I wanted to see if white puff paint would look good. So I made some just sort of freehand snowflakes, and I went over my reindeer with the white puff paint. Ultimately, I did not like the way that looked. But I think if you were going to do a gingerbread look, that the white puff paint would look fantastic. And if you like the blue paint, that's also a great idea. And I think like a blue grosgrain ribbon or something at the top would look really cute with that. But what I wanted to do was more of a pine branch and pine cone sort of thing. So I again used I think it's called Hunter Green, this Craft Smart Hunter Green paint, and some white acrylic paint. And I mixed those together to get a lighter green, and I also used just the Hunter Green. And then with a very fine paintbrush, I did some sort of approximation of some pine needles. So I did all of them the same. So I did 6 of these. I did one on each side of each ball. So just sort of a branch with a branch off of it. And then I did little clusters of 3 pine needles. And I did mostly the straight hunter green, but I did some of them in the lighter color. And I let that dry completely. And then for the pine cones, I used burnt umber to start, and just a small brush, and I sort of dabbed just sort of dots of it in a pine cone shape. I only did 1 on each branch. I wasn't super confident about my pine cones. Once that was completely dry, I mixed some white with the burnt umber to get a highlight color, because right now my pine cones just look like brown blobs. And I used a very fine brush to sort of highlight the scales of the pine cone, just little sort of curves along the pine cone where the blobs were. And if I felt they were too stark, I mixed in just a little bit of the burnt umber and sort of blurred them a little bit. But that was it for the painting on these. You might be more bold, but that was as much as I felt confident painting. So once those were completely dry, I did give those a complete coat of matte Mod Podge to seal them. Now I really wanted a thin, dark green velvet ribbon for these balls, but there weren't any in stock anywhere when I went looking. So I did find this thicker green ribbon at Joann. And so what I did was I cut this in half and then folded it in half and hot glued it together, and then used hot glue to glue that around the top of the ornament. This ribbon was very slippery, so it was a little bit difficult to work with, so a grosgrain might have been easier to work with here. But once I had done that, I just took a little piece of jute twine and tied it over that in a little bow. And that's it for these pottery ball ornaments. Now I'm really excited about these next ornaments, and I made more like decor with these. You could certainly do this and use them as tree ornaments, but I used them as decor. So what I'm going to use here is these tiny little ball ornaments that you can get at the Dollar Tree, and I used 2 packages of these. And what I have here is vinegar and a silver mirror effect spray paint. Now this is expensive spray paint. It's not silver spray paint. It's silver mirror effect spray paint, and I picked this up at Home Depot. And what I'm going to do is mix 50-50 the vinegar and water in my spray bottle. Now outside, wearing a respirator because this stuff is nasty, you don't want it in your lungs, and I did these 2 without gloves, but you are definitely going to want to wear gloves for this. What you do is you can spray it with vinegar first. I tried it both ways. So I sprayed one ball with vinegar first, and the other ball I did not spray with vinegar first. And then you spray the mirror finish spray paint on, and I apologize, I'm a little bit off screen here. I didn't realize I was out of view, but I'm giving it a light spray, and then you dab it with a cloth. I could not tell a difference between the one I sprayed with vinegar first and the one I didn't spray with vinegar first, but you do keep layering. So spray the vinegar, spray the spray paint, dab. Wait a minute. Then spray the vinegar, the spray paint, and dab. Wait a minute. And you're going to repeat this over and over until you're happy with the look. Now what I did with mine is I stuck them holder down into this piece of packing foam that something came packed in. I wouldn't use the regular white foam because the accelerant from the spray paint is going to melt that and it might stick to your balls. I'm speaking from experience because I put some in that foam and some of them got the foam melted and stuck to them. So I would use something like this, or maybe you could hang them from a wire. I wanted them to be sort of holding still. I did those. Now I tried a variation as well just to see if it would come out any better. So I took a couple of balls and I painted them with black acrylic paint before I did the technique. And I also tried, there were some sort of almost rose gold balls that were very shiny. These gold balls are not shiny. I was not able to get the paint to stick to the rose gold shiny balls. So I would say definitely use these duller gold balls. And I really couldn't see much difference between the ones I painted black and the ones I had not painted black. So I'd say any of that prep isn't necessary. Just do the technique. You're going to get a really cool look. Now I have 3 mirrors in my downstairs powder room. I actually did a video once on how I decorate them for the spring. The last time I decorated them were for the summer. I never put fall decor on them, but I'm going to upgrade them now with a silver ball and greenery look. So what I'm going to do is make a little wreath with some of them. So I have a very small wreath form here. I'm not sure if it's maybe 5 or 7 inches. I'm going to trace the inside of it on cardboard. And then I'm going to measure an inch in from that and cut out the inside. So I have basically a 5-inch circle of cardboard here, which has a 1-inch edge. And what I'm now going to do is wrap that with this green eyelash yarn. I absolutely love this stuff. I love the color. The reason I'm using it is because it looks to me like some old-fashioned blown glass ornaments that my parents have that have some faux greenery on them, but it's really sad and pathetic looking. And I feel like this kind of looks like that antique, sad, pathetic faux greenery. So that's why I'm using it. So I'm just going to wrap it all the way around the cardboard. Now, you'll notice that I have some wire stuck through the cardboard because originally I thought I would attach the balls to these pieces of wire. That did not work out. I think it's because the little hangers on them are so tall, they weren't close enough to the cardboard. So I did not do it that way. I ended up pulling them out and they just got in my way while I was wrapping the yarn around. So just ignore those, wrap yarn around your cardboard, and we'll move on to the next step. So for the next step, I took the balls, hangers inwards, and laid them around the outside of my wreath to see how many I would need. And then I just took some silver paddle wire and made a circle of that which would be able to fit through all of the hangers on the inside. And then I put all of those balls onto the wire and fastened it, spaced them evenly, and laid them down on my wreath. Now, I did use a little bit of hot glue between them to hold them together, but I would say be really careful that the hot glue is not visible here. You shouldn't need much, and you might want to wait till the very end to do the hot glue. I ended up pulling a lot of hot glue off and redoing it. Now then I did the same thing again for an inner circle of the balls. Figured out how many I needed, cut a piece of paddle wire, threaded them on, fastened it together, evenly spaced them, and set it on the inside and used a little bit of hot glue to fix them together. What I'm going to do is take green paddle wire and slide it underneath the balls but over the wire rings and wrap it around the wreath and fasten it in the back. And I'll do 4 pieces of that to hold them in place. And then the hot glue is just to make sure they stay facing outwards, that they don't flop in. Now here is my brown grosgrain ribbon from before. I'm going to tie a bow and then put a piece of wire through the back of the bow and then fasten that to the wire on the wreath, the wire that the balls are through. I want the bow at the top, the center of my wreath. And then I'm also going to put a little piece of wire through that I can use to hang the wreath. So a little piece of the green wire on the back. So I can just wrap that around the wreath and have a loop on the back for this one. Now I'm going to hang this on one of my mirrors. And I've just put some parchment over the mirror so that you don't have that distracting reflection of my camera while I'm working. So you can see I last had this decorated for the summer. And this is a pretty mirror. I actually painted it that white color. And what I usually do is I have this rope that I wrap around the mirror. But I also have this ribbon, which I have a magnet on one end and a magnet that I've glued to the back of the mirror. So I can easily just undo the magnets, take a little wreath, slide the ribbon through the wreath, and then I just reattach the magnet on the back. So if I'm just hanging wreaths on these, I don't even have to take them off the wall. I just undo the magnet, hang a wreath, and redo the magnet. So that's my first mirror. For the second mirror, I have these pine foliage picks from the Dollar Tree. I absolutely love these. I think it's some of the nicest foliage that they have. The Dollar Tree has a lot of nice foliage, in my opinion. So I'm going to use 2 of these. And what I have here are some bamboo skewers, which I spray painted with that same silver spray paint. It is expensive spray paint. I tried to paint them with silver acrylic paint, and I don't know if I didn't shake it well enough, but it didn't come out well. So I just took them outside and spray painted them. And I'm taking the hangers off 4 of the balls and just gluing the bamboo skewer into the ball with some hot glue. And I'm just going to stick them into the foliage to get just sort of a mix of balls and foliage. And this is for my tall mirror. So I'm making quite a tall thing here that I'm then going to attach to the rope that I have around the mirror vertically. So I'm just going to wrap around this with some jute twine. So I'm going to wrap around the first piece near the top, then add the second piece on top of that, and continue to wrap, just making it look nice, just sort of a solid, neat wrap. And then I'm just going to tie that in a knot at the bottom, and that's my second mirror. Now for the third mirror, it's another square mirror like the first one. This one I painted a sort of gray with gold highlights. And what I want to do is a little sort of swag on this, which I've never done before. So I'm going to have to put some little nails in it. I have these tiny little brads. So what I'm going to do is just drill holes in the corner and tap these brads in. And then I'm going to make a swag with that green eyelash yarn. And I'm just going to attach 5 silver balls, 1 to hang down on each side and 3 in the middle to the green yarn, and tie it around so that they stay in place. Otherwise, they're going to slide around. And I'm going to tie a little jute bow around the top of each of these balls because I don't like those tall hangers that are on these balls. And just sort of wrap the eyelash yarn around each of those little nails. So it's a very simple one, but again, I'm going for that sort of vintage look, so I love the way that one looks. And that's it for the faux mercury glass balls. Now this next technique, it is so simple, and I think it makes a huge difference. So this is for the textured balls. So I have these textured balls from the Dollar Tree, and they're beautiful. I love the texture, but they're very plasticky looking. So what we're going to do is paint them, and it's going to make them look a lot less like plastic. So I'm going to mix up what I call my mocha paint. So I have this chocolate brown and espresso paints, and I'm also going to add a little bit of burnt umber. I will include links to all of the paints in the description in case you want to see exactly what I used. So I'm going to mix these up, and it gives me a brownish metallic mix. And then just paint the ball all over with the mix and make sure you get into the crevices on the ball. You can see I'm wearing gloves for this because it's a little bit messy because you have to hold the ball while you're painting it. And then the next step is to rub most of that paint off. And you can pick how much you rub off, and you can pick how long you leave it on before you rub it off, because you can get different looks depending on how sort of old you want it to look. Now for the second ball, I'm actually going to use black, and I think this can also be quite a nice look depending on what you want to do with the ball. So get black into the crevices and then wipe it all off. And for that one, I then painted the mocha mixture over it and sort of dabbed that off a little bit. I love these. They look sort of like pine cones to me, so I love the shape of these little balls from the Dollar Tree. Now these other two are new shapes for me. I hadn't seen them before. They've probably been there before, but I hadn't seen them. I absolutely love this one with the straight lines going down. And I painted that one with the mocha mixture and didn't take quite as much off. And I feel like the look you get is equivalent to the mercury glass look, or really close, and a lot less expensive. Because I did buy a gold mirror spray paint as well, and spray painted some of the gold balls with that, with the mercury glass technique, and I feel like this almost looks as good as that. I found this other ball much more challenging, I think because the cracks aren't quite as deep. So what I did was I painted it all over with the burnt umber and then wiped that off, and I tried not to be too aggressive with my wiping. And then I painted one of the metallic paints over that, and then again sort of dabbed it lightly so I didn't take too much off. And I think once you've done that, these all lose that plasticky look that they have. They have more depth, and they look more like glass ornaments. So that's the easiest, quickest technique, and I think it's really fun. Now for my last ball makeover, I'm going to cover one of these balls. Again, I'm going to do a 3-inch ball with some fabric. I have some fleece. I used it on my llama, and I've used it on a wreath, and I have a lot of it left. So I'm going to cover some balls with some fleece. So to do that, I first need to make a pattern, and I'm going to include a link to a great video that shows you how to make a pattern for a ball shape. Now the difference between what I'm doing and what she does in the video is I'm covering an existing ball. So you have to work with the measurements of the ball. You have to take the diameter of the ball. Now, these 3-inch balls have an 18 centimeter diameter. It's 7 and about 1/4 inches. but the 18 centimeter dimension is easier to work with because it's divisible by 6. And if I want to cover this with 6 pieces, now I know each one is going to be 3 centimeters wide at the widest. So what you do now is you make a rectangle on a piece of paper, which is the full diameter, so 18 centimeters, by half the diameter, so 9 centimeters. And then you divide it into the 6 pieces. So you've got 6 3 centimeter by 9 centimeter rectangles. And from that point, you use a compass and follow the technique in the video that I will link. And that allows you to create a pattern piece. And if you had divided into 6, then you're going to cut 6 pieces of this pattern. So I'm going to cut 6 pieces from my fleece, and this is a little messy because I'm trying to use the edges of my fleece. I'm trying not to cut into the rectangle of my fleece, but just use the edges where I had cut from previously. So I'm going to cut 6 pieces, and then very simple, I'm going to hot glue them to my ball. The way I do this is I do opposite pieces first. So I'll just put a little bit of glue at the top of one of my pieces, stick it to the top of the ball, and then put glue on the rest of my piece and glue it down to the ball. And then I'm going to do the piece opposite that. Same thing, glue at the top, stick it down, and then put glue on the rest of it, stick it down. And then I'll do the 2 pieces that go between those pieces on each side. And if you made your pattern right, that should cover. Using fur or fleece fabric makes it more forgiving. So if the pieces weren't perfect, and mine weren't, you really can't tell because of the fur that's on the top. Now, to dress this up, I thought that I would add some bells, and I bought these bells somewhere, I don't know where. I'm going to take 2 of the gold ones, and I'm going to do the same painting technique as I did for the balls previously. So some brown, some metallic, leave it on for a while, and then dab it off, because these are very bright gold, and that's not the look that I want. Now, to hang these bells from my ball, I'm going to thread some jute through them. So the way these are made, there's like a little hat. It almost looks like an acorn, which isn't attached at all. You could certainly glue it down if you want to. But so what I'm going to do is pass the jute through the hat and then through the loop at the top of the bell, and then back up through the hat. And now that's attached with 2 pieces of jute coming through the top of the hat. And then I'll take the other end of the jute and do the same thing with the other bell, through the hat, through the loop of the bell, and then back up through the hat. And then I will tie the 2 ends together with a square knot, right over left, left over right, and trim that. So now my bells are hanging on either end of this piece, and what I'm now going to do is wrap the green eyelash yarn around it. So I'm just going to use a little dot of glue to glue the eyelash yarn to one end over the hat, spiral it around the jute, and then cut it and glue it to the other end over the hat. And then I'm going to thread some jute through the top of the ornament and tie it around this bell thing so that that is attached to the ornament, and just have the bells hang down over the ornament. There are so many ways that you could decorate this ornament. If you have a little bit of greenery or berries, you could glue them to the top. This is what I wanted to do. I wanted to stick with this green eyelash yarn and jute theme that I have. So that's it for my ornament makeovers. I would love to know if you have a favorite one. Please tell me in the comments, or if there's one you want to make, or tell me your favorite way to make over ball ornaments. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy this sort of content, please subscribe to Crafts the Charm. Thank you for spending time with me today. Take care.